I'm Nadiah Latif.
I'm Jessy Chahal.
And we've got an interesting program today talking about raising tweens.
As challenging as that may be, many of you out there are going through this particular phase as well. If your child is between the ages of 9 to 12, or if they've already crossed over that phase and are officially a teenager. Nadiah, you have a teenager, 14-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old who is a tween.
And it's almost moving overnight from wanting cuddles to suddenly saying, please, you're in my personal bubble and this is my personal space.
So how have you coped with that? Have you had any sort of, hacks or tricks to deal with that for our parents listening in today?
Well, I wish if there was a manual, it would be a lot easier. But the reality remains is that different styles work for different children. I know for my eldest, it was a very different journey. And for my second, I think it's about allowing him to find himself and his voice as an individual, and me learning my brand of parenting.
Absolutely. Well, to tell us a little bit more about some coping skills and positive parenting tips, we have a guest joining us today. She's a face you have seen on TV many times. She's no stranger to radio and television programs. She's also now a life coach, a hypnotherapist, and an advocate for positive parenting. Asha Gill, welcome to Where's the Manual? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm a bit sweaty. I'd like to, I've always been wanting to go for the Chrissy. Yeah, no, it's like Chrissy Teigen tick, that dew. It comes from washing up and then realizing you're late and having to run upstairs and then sit down, and it gives you the dew. So we don't need expensive face creams. We just need to sweat.
Absolutely. But that always happens when we have no events to go for or no pictures to take. Then you always get that beautiful, natural, pinkish blemish, which you want. But otherwise,
so that's hack of the day.
Yeah.
The dew look.
Yeah. Or is it housework? Is it housework?
Housework. Okay, I love that. That's going to be my new strategy. Housework makes me look dewy.
Oh gosh. Right. So Asha, you have a 13-year-old, and what's it like raising a tween? I think even during the MCO period, many parents came up to us and said, well, it's a really tough time. They're either glued to their gadgets or they're stuck in their rooms. There's not much communication happening, so on and so forth. But you have a tween at home. So what's that like?
Okay. So I totally get the whole ghosting of the parent. It literally goes overnight from cuddles and liking sort of your company over the scope. Some people start earlier, some people later. So anywhere between sort of 10, 11 to sort of 13, that sort of 10 to 13 bridge is when you're going to suddenly realize that it's been a few hours. Are they dead or are they just in their room? They're playing with their friends, But I actually love it. Like he's such a great young man. He is such a great young man. And he's, if he's gaming in his room, actually, I just love to hear the catcalling and the cackles and his interactions with his friends, because especially during MCO, it's all well and good being virtuous about sort of screen time and the rest of it, but they're isolated away from their friends. They can't stand their parents, so they think their parents are stupid and old-fashioned, which I have to say, guys, we are. So, that's just kind of what happens. And, one thing I did miss was we used to do Sunday movies together. And that just like went out the window overnight. And I went through the whole Malaysian Indian grandmother guilt tripping. Why you don't want to sit next to me anymore? Why don't you want to watch a movie? And then I realized I got to get to his level. So I'm like, and a good friend of mine suggested this as well. And she was like, so it's now TV suppers. So, this whole idea of TV suppers is like really bad. No, it isn't. If it's a school night and like literally, especially if it's just the two of us and the dogs, it's like a TV supper is where we sit, we're together, we're doing something together, we talk about it. That's good enough for me. I'll take what I can get, So we just actually, we love the same things. So we just literally binge watch Umbrella Academy 2 together. We just sat there, we make a day of it. It's like, okay, we eat in front of the TV, we just, okay, stop, loo breaks, tea breaks, that kind of thing. So I think the most important thing about tweens is that they're really starting to have a little fiddle around for who they really are. And I think we need to kind of back off with trying to keep things the same way and be as adaptable as we can within our boundaries. I'm not saying, let them go start drinking and driving the car or anything ridiculous like that. But just letting them kind of develop and having that open communication, because if they're gaming for X amount of time, I can go up to them and go, dude, you've been like with your friends for like 4 hours. It's time to get off and let's go and do something. Or can you do something? And I give him stuff to do. So it's like, go wash the dogs, go do this. And I pay him for it also. Because I think it's really
incentive. Right there.
I wanted to ask you, this morning I was just talking to 2 other mothers, and we were struggling between trying to find ourselves as a parent as well. So, I mean, you started being a mom that was all cuddly with your little one. And like you said, almost overnight, suddenly it's like, Mom, it's not cool. Like you're all over my space right now. And a friend of mine was saying, am I a helicopter mom now? Do I maintain my tiger mom? Because all of us have got different parenting styles, but we don't want to relinquish that ability to make memories with them. And you said something very important about getting it on their level. And it's nothing to do with going down to their level. It's just their level, whatever level that is. Right?
Exactly. And that's a fine art as well. So what do parents need to sort of understand or change about themselves or their behavior so that they can better get acquainted?
What worked for you?
Or
what
understand
worked for you?
their tweet?
I think the thing is that I think for me, it was always like, he is his own entity. So it's really important. Like with a friend, you wouldn't bulldoze your friend in terms of topics of conversation and all that kind of stuff. It's really important to get to know who the hell they are. And they're hilarious, like seriously hilarious. And they're so, the nuggets of wisdom that come out of their mouth, because they see things from such a different perspective. And they're so elasticy, rubber bandy with how they think about things, and he reminds me all the time that it's okay to change my mind. We were taught, you make a decision, you go for it. But actually, if you're doing something and it's not fun, why not stop and change something else? So it's kind of like really looking at them as individuals, and they're not a mini version of yourself. They're not, they are your child, of course, and there is a role you have to do, but at the same time, it's like, get to know them. I mean, honestly, when Pokemon phase lasted a little bit longer that I could cope, and in-depth conversations about different stuff that was going on was literally, it got to me. I then went, can we talk about something else that I like now? But it's still on his level. It's like I'm still speaking his language, going, okay, you've been talking at me for like 30 minutes and it's gone. So can we talk about something else? And he's like, okay, fine. What do you want to talk about? And I'm like, how was your day? He's like, oh God, this is so boring. I'm like, okay, what do I want to talk about? So, and then it's interesting because then I discover that I am quite boring, or I haven't really had much thinking that day because I don't really have anything interesting or funny to share. And so therefore I start looking for things or being more aware of things that I see, because then I can actually tell him about this funny thing that happened, or, this other thing that happened. Like today, I'm going to be telling him about the rat trap and the fact that I caught this rat, and it was like this tiny sort of like almost adolescent tween rat. And it was so beautiful.
A teenage rat.
It was so beautiful and so cute, and it literally went through my mind, like, if I wash him and I go and get him injected and stuff, could we have him as a pet? And I could see both my dogs went, oh, that's a toy. So I realized that was a bad thing. But so I'm storing stuff to tell him about my day that he would be interested in. So I think it's important to meet them as a person,
Yeah,
that's a powerful message, actually, acknowledging them as individuals of their own.
That's right. That they have their own journey and their own experiences determine who they are through their personalities, and we're just there as a guide or as some kind of aid to help them understand. And again, like as we said in the previous episode as well, through that we actually learn about ourselves.
Yes, and they're teaching us daily.
I
know I'm learning from my kids.
I know.
Daily.
Yeah.
I'm getting burned.
I'm still sleep deprived, so I don't know anything about anything else. But how do you keep your sanity in those moments where you're like, oh, I can't deal with this. Why doesn't my kid understand or my tween understand? And how would you have those difficult conversations as well? Like, how do you start or get that ball rolling?
Okay, so when you're having that kind of moment and you're having a meltdown, you're just having a meltdown. And I think the most important thing, because I have lost my rag at him, and because I've been it's like it's way past here. I can't even breathe, and something's happened and I've lost it. I think the most important thing, again, and this goes back to them as an individual person, is to say, I'm really sorry, I messed up. I lost my rag. I didn't handle it better. Because people, it's like this whole thing of grown-ups know better. I don't subscribe to that, because grown-ups have road rage. Grown-ups get super mad over the last toilet roll in the supermarket, So
and they don't apologize enough, actually, when they should.
Right. So being able to say, I'm really sorry, I didn't handle that well at all, but here's, if it's a serious thing, or you need to have a discussion because there was an issue there also, it's like, but let's talk about this, because when you do that, for example, there's everything we do has a consequence and an outcome, right? And so, my whole thing with them is we're a team. Like it or not, we're a team. And it's okay to hate me, and it's okay to be angry with me. That's okay, but I need you to understand X, Y, and Z, for example. So it's having a real conversation. It's not, so because in those moments, I mean, like literally, there was one time I was so furious. I had a mug in my hand, and I just went, and there was mug all over, mug broken all over the floor, and I just burst into tears. And my kid's like looking at me, going, in his mind, he's probably thinking, freak.
Yeah, but I guess it's important to also talk about the anger or the despair in those moments. I mean, it's okay for mom or dad to lose their shit. I mean, don't hurt your child, but it's okay to not feel like you have it all together. And I think that's one of the points that we want to, really highlight, to say that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not know exactly what needs to be done, or it's okay to just feel upset and angry. Like, that's okay. That's normal.
And what's also normal is to basically take ownership of that and say, I didn't handle that well. I was overwhelmed, and there is nothing wrong. You don't lose power by apologizing to a fellow adult or to a child. It's you taking accountability for that, So I think that's super important. But I mean, like, having those difficult conversations. I was asking someone about this who had sons quite a few years ago. How do I have those big conversations? The ones that are a little bit like, ooh, because I don't have a problem with having the conversation. I just don't want my child to be traumatized by me having it and then needing therapy because he had to talk to his mother about things like, I don't know, let's not even go there. But I think the thing is, again, it's like there is a limit to their boundaries or their understanding. And so I think sitting down to have huge conversations, like even as an adult, I can't process all of it, right? But when you're little, it's just like it's being bombarded. So it's kind of like you start the conversation and then you give them permission to have a boundary line or to call it like, okay, that's it. That's all I can handle. And when they have that, you honor that and kind of go, okay, the stop wand is going, and it's like, okay, but we're going to continue this, right? So you have that commitment. Yes, we'll continue this. Not necessarily when only you want it, but when, okay, we agree. Fine, we'll leave it. Because there's nothing to, you can't change things or fix things in just one go, because you want them to be thought about, processed, and then you kind of, summarize again the next time and then carry on to the next forward, and you inch along and you have those conversations, and they have their boundaries when something's just too much, or it's like, grossed out, don't go there,
How do you know when there is that possibility for a pause button and then you can continue these conversations later? Because I think the challenge that I would have is, say, for example, we're having a difficult conversation about, can be life or parental relationships or whatever. And sometimes it's a situation where you don't have that luxury of space time. If you agree, okay, this is not working, everybody needs a time out. Can we talk about this later in the evening? Do you set when that conversation time is going to happen again, or do you just let it organically happen when everyone's ready?
I don't, sometimes I've said it, like if it's something that it's sort of more immediate, okay, we're going to talk about this after dinner, right? Sometimes there's that. And then other times there's, okay, well, let's just leave it. Let's talk about it in a couple of days or maybe at the weekend or something. So there's a kind of frame, but it's not set in stone. Because also you don't want to have that dreaded thing. Like I know when I was younger and having to have those conversations, if you knew that it was happening on Saturday morning, like Friday night, you wouldn't sleep. You'd be like, oh.
Wait until your mother hears the XYZ, whatever the sentence was, right? That anticipation is
You'll be dreading it every moment. You'll be like, how do I get out of this? Right.
And the funny thing is that I was just going to say that the pain, the suffering comes in that waiting. We know as mothers about to give birth, like just let's get it over and done with. So I think we can take away a lot of stress from our kids by not sometimes setting something so specific that they have this dreaded leading up. But it's kind of like, we'll talk at the weekend, and then you check in on Saturday morning. Hey, can we have that conversation maybe later on today, maybe in the afternoon? Or, oh no, I got homework. Okay, well, why don't you do your homework this morning, and then we'll talk later. You know, that kind of thing. So it's not like, it's the anticipation that fear of that thing is often worse than the thing itself.
Yeah.
But I think in all the experience I've had and coaching myself, because I also teach people how to self-coach, you know, is that I think the fundamental thing is we forget that we were kids. We forget about tapping into what it was like when we were kids and how unjust and unfair stuff is, right? And there are ways to actually bridge that. So when a parent or a child doesn't have that sort of, not so much the child actually, because invariably it is, you know, if you're talking about sort of parenting as the parent doing it, right? It's like, you know, one of the key things is that everyone thinks that, you know, when you become a parent, you should be a responsible adult and you should know, which is rubbish, right? Which is why you guys
Which is why there's no manual.
It probably never will be.
Exactly. So there's that. And then the second thing is tap into when you're a kid, like, you know, just because you're an adult and you're like going back to the example you said earlier, and you're a parent that loves hugging your kid and you don't want that to stop and you're kind of almost forcing that on them, right? You've got to think, well, when I was that, it was embarrassing. I wanted to stop. Like I joke, you know, like, I'm going to drop you off at school. I'm going to kiss you in front of everyone. He's like, oh my God. Like, he's never rolling his eyes at me.
Right?
It's punishment. But I'm joking with him. Like I would never do that on a conscious level, just because it's for them. It's like shaming. It's like totally uncooling them, or whatever the phrase is of the moment. So I think it's, you know, remember what it's like when you were a kid, and when you're communicating. But that's also difficult because I think also how we were brought up, we don't realize that we subscribe to a set of beliefs, and the way we were brought up is invariably how we, unless we go completely against the grain, how we bring up the kids. You know, oh God, I sound like my mother. Oh God, I sound like my dad. We often say that or think that to ourselves. Oh my God, I just sounded like my mother. You know,
It's me all the time. Growing up, I said, I swear I'd never be like
right?
you, and I'm
Because
doing exactly the same
word
thing.
never, and then we go
Using the same
Exactly.
words. Like, you know, when you grow up, you'll understand. I'm like, oh gosh, that's my mom talking through me. Sorry, Mom.
Right, but the thing, and that's the thing, it's like just having an awareness of, like, when you go, oh my God, I sound like my mother. Don't just stop there. Just look back and go, what was I saying? And was it relevant here? Or was it because I didn't have a response for this situation? So I just borrowed it because, you know, we don't know what we don't know until we know we don't know it, right? So when you're in a situation where something new comes up and you're like,
that's just parenting in a nutshell. We don't know until we know we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Most things that we go through in life.
Gosh.
So I think in a nutshell, it's, you know, that one key is kind of like remembering what it was like, and also remembering, I think one key thing as well is as much as it seems like it, they're not doing it to you on purpose. They're not trying to torture you. They're not doing it to you.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
They're just being, right? They're just behaving. They're just actually, they're not doing it to you. So when they are embarrassing or they are whatever, it's like, it's not, oh my God, how could you do this to me? They're not doing it to you. They're just trying to figure.
It's not you, and it's not personal.
Right. Yeah. It's just.
I have one question.
Yeah.
How do you deal with tweens ghosting you as a parent? Because you said that in the beginning. It's often from everything. I mean, last week we were talking about Are We There Yet? And how children want every single second of your day to you saying, hey, and they're like, bye. See you later.
I hear mom.
See ya, I don't want to be here. Nobody's here.
Yep. I find that when you're really irritating with your kids, younger kids, they stop asking. So what I used to do with John was something I learned off one of my directors from the Lonely Planet series. He was such an amazing director, such an amazing dad. He was such an amazing dad. And he taught me this. Not when I was pregnant. I we were having this discussion one night after filming and stuff, and I was like, "How do you deal with it? Are we there yet?" It was just, drives me crazy. I wasn't even pregnant, right? Anyway, so I remember this piece of advice, and for all mums out there, when we deal with it, are we there yet, or have we finished yet, or whatever, the best thing you can do is speak nonsense. So his thing was always like, if they say, "How much longer?" and he'd just go, 7, and they'd be like, 7 what? And he's like, 7, and they go, "No, but how much longer till we get 7?" Like he would just keep repeating, because after a while, like, I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm going to have fun with this. And I'm going to do it for you. Right. So just make it up. Like, what are we having for dinner? Rat's ass. What? What are we having for dinner? Rat's ass. What are we having for dinner? Rat's ass. Surprise. Just because it allows you to have a little bit of fun, release, and it irritates them. So they just go, "Oh, God, mom," and then they go off and amuse themselves.
That's a good tip, actually.
That's like a spray, like a bug's wing.
Yeah, it is.
And so, of course, with social media as well, how do you put a tab on that, or how do you control that? Many parents find that that's a space where they are not present, they can't control, and the kids are just out in the wild. So how would you talk to your son about that and draw some boundaries over there?
So this is really tricky, because in a way, I actually wrote an article about this, and I call it swimming with sharks, because in this new area where everyone's connected digitally, right? You're swimming with sharks we've never seen before.
Yes.
Because I certainly didn't have to deal with any of these issues in my face like the kids do today. And it starts off when they're younger. It's easy to tap a button to buy something because the parents' credit card's linked. It's easy to accept people because you think that they're friends or they're other kids, right? It's dangerous, but it's not just dangerous from a sort of physical standpoint, but it's dangerous for a mental and emotional standpoint as well. So I think that the most important thing that we can do, and you guys have got younger kids. Nadiah, how old are yours?
1 to 14.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure
she's got 4 kids. 4, Asha, 4.
You didn't see the memo. Equal ... X amount. No. So I think the thing is, first of all, I mean, this is my opinion and my opinion only, but I think most important of all is to help the child develop the understanding of what making a choice is.
Yes.
And then it's what making a good choice for them is, and understanding on the different stages of the ages, the kind of reality of stuff out there. So to talk about, when they're 5, 6, I know some kids that young who are on Instagram and stuff like that, crazy enough. But it's like, okay, so if they're going to be on that, or they have access to that, whether you like it or not, you need to be having the conversations about consent, body,
yes,
bullying, trolling, mental health, all those kinds of things in those nugget-sized pieces. And also one thing is to help find them their level of someone who's doing it right.
yes.
So if, for example, it's like, if you're going to follow, and I'm not saying this, I don't want to give examples in a sense, because I don't think anyone's bad per se, but if you got your 6-year-old who's following a particular influencer or star or something, and they're just talking about stuff that's a little bit too old for them, or their behavior is perhaps not what you want your kid to sort of aspire to, just because it's unsafe for them at this age, because they don't understand, about who they are now.
Yes.
Find them by accident somebody who's just as cool, if not cooler, but got the better value set that's happening in terms of how they present themselves, and kind of accidentally expose them to it. Because if you tell child. Oh, isn't this
I think
cool?
that's the trick, right? That is say, oh, well, check out this person. Pretty cool, huh? And then just gonna leave it there.
No, not even saying pretty cool, huh? No. That because that's they understand baiting. It's like, oh my god, they think we're so stupid. See, they catch that. So what you need to do is basically maybe screen time when you're watching stuff together. Choose the show that person's in, or
just slip it in like that.
Have it on, like if you've got your laptop out and you're watching, press play because you're listening to this person talk. They're overhearing it and they may, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just listening to, for example, Taylor Swift talking about, how she was dealing with fame and and it's like, oh, fame, Taylor Swift's a big name, so it's kind of sucking them in without going, oh, just have a look at that. Isn't it nice? Because if they think you think it's cool and they don't think you're cool, you're dead in the water. You're like chum to the sharks. Forget it.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So I think
for my 3-year-old, that works at this point. I've got 10 years to change that script. For now, it's mommy, I want to be like you in anything you do. Yeah.
10 years. Gosh, you're an optimist.
I've got a long way to go.
But I think also the other thing is that you need to develop a relationship that has trust in it. Like my kid's 13. He's had access to, because my credit card, for example, is linked up to whatever iTunes or whatever the stuff is that's going on there to make it easy for me. It's my account. I've never ever had one accidental, touch wood, purchase. I've never had. There's always a discussion of, I'd like to buy this. And because he's also been doing chores for quite a few years and he gets a bit of pocket money for that, or I pay him to do the chores. It's like, I have $25. Could you loan me 10 and blah, blah, blah. And so not only are they learning responsibility, accountability for themselves and their choices. And the important thing is, and I used to say this when he was quite young, is you can't unsee something.
Yes.
You can't unhear something. And you may not know what's good for you or not.
One of the biggest messages that I got during MCO, and this coming from my 9-year-old, was, why do adults not do the things that they say we're supposed to do? And you've had this conversation with him, and he's done this several times now. For example, we were saying, go out, wear masks, social distance, make sure that we keep our hand hygiene. We need to maintain, keep the virus in control. But then every time they see things in the news, it's cluster X, cluster Y, more people. So he's wondering, like, why are you not listening and following the exact same thing that you're telling children to do? And I'm like, that is true. That's adults for you.
Right? But that's a conversation about not making the right choice and being a responsible human being. And I think that's what we're supposed to do, is guide them to be as responsible as they can on the levels that they're going through to make choices. If you expect, bad choices will be made. Rash choices will be made. If you expect that, you haven't set the bar so high that everyone's always failing. In fact, the bar is so low that every win is something that's so amazing that you're giving affirmative reinforcement. I'm not talking about positive. Like, don't say well done for putting your toys away or putting your pencil case back, because at a certain age, this should be something that you do already naturally, right?
And you should be doing it.
But
age appropriateness.
Yes, is so important. And please, Malaysians, this is something that drives me crazy. Stop feeding your children once they're like above the age of 2. Stop it. Let them feed themselves. Let them make a mess. And I say this because it's like this. I've seen so many, and I still see it. I see it all the time. And I understand that it is a loving thing to sort of do for your child in terms of culture. But a child who understands that he can feed himself and learn to do it so he can do it well, so as not to make a mess. We don't understand how important these pivotal milestones are for children. Right. You think about the idea of being spoon-fed all the way.
That's literally spoon-fed.
Right.
Yeah.
The behavior of waiting for someone to do something or give something or make it available. And it is really part of a lot of the things I see. People just, they don't step forward to do something. They're afraid they don't do it because, and it sounds silly, but it starts back when you've got 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds being fed. Just be brave, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to get it wrong. You are for sure going to get it wrong, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to mess up and screw up as a parent. We all do. So just, if you know that, and you know that everybody else does the same thing in different ways, then you just be brave about it. And then just say sorry if you got it wrong.
Yeah. More power to us parents.
Exactly. I thought that was really well said. I mean, no one's going to tell you what the future is going to hold, how things are going to be. But you said, have courage. You said, developing trust. You said, acknowledging that your little person is an individual trying to find his or herself, the same way you are trying to find your space and your individuality and your brand as a parent. And it's a shared journey, right?
Absolutely. I think, we've never been a parent prior to having them, and they obviously look at us as, at one point they are moon and stars, and then at a later point
Not so cool.
yeah, but a friend as well, so I guess that's the point us parents will have to want to aim to get to, and that would make conversations with them and time spent with them much more special as well. Thank you so much, Asha. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks for having me,
have fun
guys.
making memories. Bye.
Oh, bye.
And that was our conversation with Asha Gill, life coach and hypnotherapist, and perhaps most importantly, mom to a 13-year-old.
So what was your key takeaway?
That it's okay for us to lose our... Yeah, it's fine. As parents, we are, in the rat race. We're dealing with so many things on a daily basis. And if we come home and we are unable to cope with the frustrations, or perhaps even
it's okay to be vulnerable.
Anger,
right?
It's okay, as long as you, sit with your child and make them understand, and also try to understand their frustrations and what they're going through as well.
For me, I think the biggest takeaway is a reminder that your child is his or her own person. Right? They are their own individual. They're trying to find themselves the same way you are trying to find yourself as a parent.
Absolutely. And so not to impose your ideas and sort of
they're not your mini you.
Ways. Exactly. That's what Asha said as well. They are not mini yous. Well, we hope that you found this episode fruitful. Of course, as usual, like, share, and leave your comments. We'd love to get more feedback from all of you. And remember, it's not just a mommy's show. It's also a daddy's show. And that's what we hope to do next week.
Share your experiences, what has worked for you. And if you've got tips for us to learn, do let us know.
That's right. For now, bye.